So, if you didn't hear, project managers, architects for Powell. DPR, DGS, DGS. So the agenda for tonight, obviously, was the introduction. We just took care of that. We're going to do the rules of the road. I'll do that in just a second. And then the agenda, how we got here, what the site plan is, with the existing site, the site plan with the community gardens close up for people that don't know, the options that we want you to consider, the alternative site locations that the current community garden group proposed to DGS. Also, our option 1 and option 2, the school site plan, and then next steps. So the rules of the road, this is probably the most important part of the meeting. Please take your cell phone out. You're saying you don't have a cell phone? So, you're important people with children. And if you don't have children, you're still important. Put your phone on vibrate, not silent. The next important rule. Somebody's opinion is going to differ from someone else's opinion. And it's okay. Third rule. The restrooms are outside to the left and to the right. You do not need to raise your hand. It is after school hours. Fourth rule. I will respect you. You have to respect me, and we will have a great meeting. Did not start on time because I always start late so that people can come in, but I always end on time. With the caveat that at 7 o'clock I'll shut the official meeting down. I will stay, Partlow will stay because he's riding with me, and we will answer as many questions as possible. I will tell you, once the questions get repetitive, which typically they do, I will say we answered that. Next question. I'm not doing that to be rude. I'm doing that to stay on time and on task. So, you will have an opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the presentation. If that becomes a problem, we'll make the necessary adjustments. So, with that being said, do you have a quick question?
That was my question. Is there time for questions?
Yeah. So, what we'll do is during the school plan and the next steps, before I get to the next step, I'll say if you have any questions. If you don't understand or can't hear me, I'm going to ask for you to do like this. If you can't hear me in the back, because if you can't hear me in the back, then they can't hear me in the front. Okay, let's get started. So, I apologize for the light, but if we close the curtains or turn the light out, it's going to get hot. So, the idea here is just to acclimate you. This is where we are now. This up here is the rec center. Down here is the community garden. This is 14th Street. This is Upshur Street. This is Taylor Street. Here's 13th, and here's Shepherd. So, again, this is how we're looking at the site, and the gentleman is going to try to turn down the light or so. The project site is here. Taylor Street is here. The community garden is here. Shepherd is here. Upshur Park is here. Thank you, sir. So, the school budget and the existing garden's total budget is $42 million. I'm going to tell you how we got to that in just a second. So, this is the south view of the garden, and this is the north view of the garden right beside. So, to walk you through how we got here, in 2011, 2012, the formal SIT team, which is the school improvement team, was formed. The school improvement team is made up of the principal, teachers. Oh, let me tell you. This presentation is going to be online so you can download it and have it. So don't worry if you're missing anything. For me, a PowerPoint presentation is an aid. It is not the presentation. I am the show. So School improvement team, again, is made up of a principal, because it's their school as long as they're the principal, a few parents. What we try to do is have a community representative. A lot of times it's the A and C commissioner. And then what we do is have teachers on the SIT team as well. And the SIT team, and depending on if it's an elementary school, or middle school, or high school, we try to have a couple of students on the SIT team. And the SIT team, a good SIT team is about 10 to 12 people on a SIT team. And so what they do essentially is DCPS, or the public school system, along with the mayor, come up with what school needs to be modernized or spruced up, or what's called a phase one, which is typically classrooms, hallways, and bathrooms. Because you know how the schools were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And so once the mayor and the chancellor decide that a school is going to be modernized or have a phase one or have some work done, they then come to what's now called DGS, the Department of General Services. We were formed about 3 years ago to merge all of the real estate assets or agencies so that the left hand and the right hand knew what was happening. So for DPR, we took over all of their capital projects, meaning all of their building or construction. For DCPS, we took over all of their capital projects. The only thing that we don't do is build libraries. And so we build, we maintain, and we secure all of the district's facilities. And so that school improvement team was formed. And then because in 2011, Powell was supposed to have a modest phase one, which again is the classrooms, the bathrooms, and the hallway were all supposed to be renovated. Well, what happened was all of you start moving to the neighborhood with the people that are already here and the population grew. So what happened is that the community and the school system decided that they needed an addition. And at first it was supposed to be a phase one and then like 8 classes. Then it became another wing. Then it became 2 wings. So over that year, that phase one grew into a full modernization. A full modernization is everything gets touched and you may have some additions. That means outside, inside, windows, HVAC, all the systems. I want to take a second to acknowledge our A&C commissioner, but he'll get to say something later. And then in June of 2013, the Powell School Master Plan design was approved. So it took almost 2 years, or a year and a half, 2 years, to get the design done and finalized, because DCPS, the community, the teachers were all in negotiation of how to make that happen. And what happens is what's called an EdSpec, or educational specification, is created to say this many kids need this many seats, and this is the type of program that's going to be at the school. So you see Roosevelt just on the corner is getting modernized as well. And you see them all throughout the city. So then, in the summer of 13, Building A got touched. Then the logistical planning and discussion began for the Building B and C. So I'll show you what those are later. And then the environmental impact agreement form was reviewed, and I know that was important to a lot of the community garden. It's now a part of the law that was not only reviewed but approved in May of 14. And that's the environmental impact of the municipals, the buildings, the schools, the parks, the recs, all of that is becoming more restrictive or better for the community, right? And so we have to do that in every project. And then the community garden option began to develop. Because the site plan was taking shape. So then, in July, I think that Mark was one of the first people I talked to, and you guys heard the grapevine, and we didn't have a community meeting to say, hey, we're thinking about moving the site. We didn't talk about what the impact would be on the parents, but not just the parents, but the community, because DGS is wrapping its arm around how do we do outreach, right? Like, do we not because we affect more than the block that we are on. We affect blocks and blocks away. So we're getting better day, month, year in doing outreach. So now one of our standard practices that we just started to do probably in 2012 is every time we have a sit team meeting, we will then have a community meeting. And so that hasn't happened here at all, but we are going to put it on that track. Roosevelt has been on that track, so some might like that in there, but maybe not. And so then instruction will start in July, because each summer DGS has what's called its summer miracles. And the summer miracles are we build or renovate portions of the schools in 8 weeks. And the reason it's called miracles is because the average school gets about $12 to $15 million spent in that 8 weeks. The school and the parents say it's no possible way that you're going to be able to do all of that in 8 weeks. It's going to take a miracle, and that's how the name happened. And so the city administrator, Powell, who built the convention center, as well as the baseball stadium, was originally in charge of the project and knew that the kids had to sit in those seats, and failure was not an option. And so that's the mantra that we've taken thus far. And then in 2016, this whole Powell school project will be completed. There will be buildings A through D, which I'll show you as well. But that's how I got here. That's part of why you're sitting here tonight. So the community guard, what was being considered? Not moving the guard, removing the guard, consolidating guards, alternative locations. Do not harm, do not reduce the footprint of the guard. Make it easy to access. Making sure that the guard performing seasons and the guard cycle take consideration. Have the same minutes and make sure the impact to the guard and the community was minimal. And then the option divided here divided from. So those were in a nutshell discussions that have been had since the logistics had to be taken care of or go through as the last slide. So here is the layout of the site for the school. So building A is here. It was built in 1999. Building B is here in 1929. Building C, building D will be building. Some of the things that you can see from where you're sitting is there's loading area here, probably the alley. There'll be free space here, patios, green space, and the play area, the plaza. All of those are part of the educational specifications that our district primary clients with DGS, as well as the community, as well as the kids, as well as the parents. So, and again, we'll do an attachment to the PowerPoint presentation so that you can read it in its entirety. Basically, the Twin Oaks community, and you guys correct me if I say anything improper, gave several alternatives which were all ways to not move the garden and find other alternative sites for parking for the teachers. So we considered those as well. And so here this is still their recommendation. And so all the dots, if you saw in the first slide, recommend other places to be able to put the garden, right? So they thought
Parking lot. Parking lot.
Parking lot, sorry.
Yes.
The parking lot.
Exactly.
Next. And so we all know this space very well. And then here, a link for soil fertility to make sure that we took into consideration and the impact of the garden. And then I think that one thing that we left out in the planning stage, but we left out in the PowerPoint, is that the camaraderie of the gardeners from both sides of the street, that we know that is an important, priceless element as well. So that was taken under great consideration.
I mean, and more than just a camaraderie, a synergy.
Yeah.
You have, by having both gardens together, you can have combined work and whatnot.
Not just work, but resources,
Exactly.
knowledge sharing, a whole lot of things that were taken into consideration. Next slide. So DGS came up with approximately, I think it's 4 or 5 alternative locations itself, not for parking, but for the garden. This is the basketball court here on, was that Arkansas? And then, which 2 locations were here? This location here was which one? By Sharp as well. And then right here on 13th Street, some other locations. When we do the PowerPoint online, I'll give it to you. But I just wanted you to see that this wasn't just done in the vacuum. We thought about underground parking as well. But we still would have to move the garden. So even with a $42 million budget, it just starts to become cost prohibitive for some of the logical, or what people would think are logical alternatives.
Sorry, those are alternative locations for parking or for the garden?
For the garden that we considered, not that are in play now. So to be considered, this is the first option that we want you to consider. So how this will work, essentially, is we'll show you these 2 options. You'll have about 2 weeks to weigh in to say, I like option 1, I like option 2, or I don't like either of them. But we will be considering option 1 or option 2. I'll give you an email address to be able to give you your opinion. I'm also going to give you my cell phone number to give you your opinion. And then we'll meet again in 2 weeks to basically say what you said and what the deliberation process was with DCPS, DPR, and DGS, and what the solution is. And so what I want to make clear, that whatever option we choose, we're not talking about moving the garden immediately, and that we know that growing season is important, and that the new location had to be further. So option 1, this is the rec center, and it's a better view if you look over here. So these are the basketball courts, this is the rec center, and it's behind Sharp Up. And this is Arkansas. So 2 of the pros is that obviously that it's flat and it's accessible from the street. The cons is that the solar access creates get a larger area. It's not shaded or as shaded. The utilities are there, but it does need to. We need to remove some parking spaces and regrade that area. And so the greenhouse would be larger than the one that you have now. Again, make it ADA accessible, and then we would work with the Twin Oaks community to be able to talk about some amenities and to make it better than where you are now. Next slide.
Excuse me, what was the size of that option 2?
What's the size? It's about 14,000 square feet.
And you would regrade the whole hill?
We will regrade that area. So I'm going to get into questions right now. Right now, I'm going to get into questions right now. Right after I talk about this. So the next steps essentially is what you are going to email, and I'll give you the email address, what your choice is, either A or B. I'm asking that you provide in your email just your address so that all of your friends from New Hampshire and Virginia that love your garden can't weigh in, that you can weigh in. That the deadline for emailing us will be the 11th. That is a Friday. Our meeting would then be on the 16th. Kenny, have to read all of your emails. So that's why I'm asking for that amount of time so that I can read them over the weekend and then give a brief to the director of the agency, to the team here, to DPR and DCPS. And then once that happens, they'll make the decision on option A or option B. And then we'll do the next community meeting, review the options, and go through how the decision-making process went. And if someone between that period of time can come up with I'm going to get to questions right now. If somebody can come up with something that we hadn't thought of, I will definitely entertain that during that period of time. With that being said, we'll post the presentation tomorrow. It's on the Powell school page, not the community garden page. Now, with that, this is how the question and answer goes. You raise your hand, I point. We do about 2 rounds. It should work out. So, you had a question, then you had a question, then you. Okay, good times.
So for option 2, you would regrade that hill, or would it be in front of that hill? So it would be terrace the whole way up? Okay.
So the question was, would in option 2, would they regrade the hill? And so one of the design team said that they would terrace it. And so but understand if they terraced it, they would do it so that things could grow. So we were going here, I'm coming.
So I'm Mark Seltzer. I'm on the board of the Twin Oaks Community Garden. One of the questions that I had is you showed our options document, which I really appreciate. But I wanted you touched base mainly on the latter options as far as different locations. One of the questions that I had was with respect to some of the earlier options that we had shown. I don't know if you want to pull up that slide, but we had asked about whether or not, in lieu of moving the garden, you'd considered looking at some of the unzoned street parking options, yes, or whether you had, and sort of what your concerns were with those. Another option was offering, as the federal government does, metro transit subsidies to faculty who would have been driving to school and now would have an option of commuting by metro transit. A third option, of course, would be installing enough bike racks so teachers and faculty can use that.
So DCPS, with your last two, his basic question was, you gotta go to his white page.
First page. So it's these first two options here.
So the first 2 options, do you consider, or why do you take off the table the metro subsidy PCPS did not want that option because they wanted their teachers to be able to have option park, and so that's their call. The unzoned parking, actually the director had us look at that. That is a request that actually comes from one or two schools across the city, and it has been an administrative or executive decision, the executive side of the government, that we wouldn't be doing that because then that would cause other problems. That's that. And then the land swap, we needed the project to move forward, and it just would take too long. So we did consider them. We had a healthy debate about them, but we decided to move in the direction that we were showing tonight. We're going to go here, then here, and then I'll come back that way.
Thank you very much for presenting all this. It sounds like, or how willing are you to consider anything outside of the two options? It sounds like you've presented it in a way that's like, we can take either option 1 or option 2. And how willing are you to consider anything outside of those options, or are those just set in stone at this point? And I still don't understand why keeping the garden intact is cost prohibited or not an option. And for example, could you
gotta
not
speak louder because now I'm not going to be able to repeat your whole thing.
Okay. And for example, second part is I don't understand why moving the garden would be cost prohibitive and not an option still. And then thirdly, could you not put the parking lot where you're proposing option number 2 across the street from the school?
So, okay, so did most everyone hear her question? Yeah, okay.
Do you want me to
So
yeah,
the first question was, go ahead, try it again.
It was, how willing are they to consider any options outside of option 1 or 2?
Okay, let me answer that question,
Okay.
then we can keep going. Okay, so I said here that unless someone comes up with something that we haven't considered, from the options that you guys presented, the options that we thought of, and if someone else can come up with something that we have not considered, we're open to considering it. I think that is not probable because I think that based on us being the subject matter experts on building and considering all of the things that have happened across the city similar to this project, that if it happens, I'm more than open to it. If it doesn't happen, I wouldn't be surprised, but we're open to it. So next question.
Why is it cost prohibitive to keep the garden where it is, or why is that still not an option?
So the cost prohibitive part about the garden was the underground parking option.
Okay.
Because it is cheaper to move it and then instead of building underground parking. And then that opens up a whole can of worms. She's going to ask your question.
Well, then why isn't keeping the garden where it is still an option, or could you put the parking lot where you're considering option 2, putting the garden?
Or option 1.
Correct. So,
option.
Go ahead.
Or option.
Okay, so we try as a part of our building standards to keep the parking in close proximity on the same site as the school. And so that's why we wouldn't put it over there, because it takes a whole different set of planning, building to have a parking lot, which unfortunately I've learned the hard way. Well, hold on, let her finish, and then I'm going to get to you all, so don't be upset.
Well, I think we would ask if you could compromise on that point and consider the parking lot outside of the site of the immediate school. Or
We
the
have.
across the street.
We have considered it, and we're not going in that direction at this time. So we're going to go here, and then I'm coming back. Yeah. So here,
So according to your last slide,
can you talk louder or start
according
around?
to your last slide
Uh-huh.
on your PowerPoint presentation, can you go to the last slide, please? You provided a criteria for contacting you and expressing our options. How are you weighing the person's preference when they email you? Are you weighing the gardener's preference more so than a person who's not involved with the garden, or just a random citizen, or how is that being determined?
So the question basically is, how are we weighing the opinion or the input of choice? A gardener versus a random citizen versus someone else. So obviously, I'm going to take a gardener and a local resident in the envelope more than someone that lives in Maryland, Virginia, or in another part of the city. Can I give you a weighted average? No.
Are you going to provide those comments to public? Are they going to be publicly available?
I'll consider it, yeah. I mean, it's all public information. When I say I'll consider it, that means to me, yes. How I post it on the website is, I just need to think through that.
Okay.
Because then I need to take out people's addresses,
Sure.
and email.
For privacy considerations,
Right.
I completely understand that. I just want to see how transparent the decision making will be.
Sure.
Okay.
Here and then here.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly. I'm a gardener and a community member, and I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, although I'm disappointed that it's involved in the conversation, and I'm also disappointed that you're trying to reach your conclusions. So my question is, have you tested the soil at proposed sites 1 and 2, and can you share with us the methodology, so the results of that test for lead, arsenic, other heavy metals, and toxins that would be relevant to our garden?
So Molly said that she was a gardener, that she was glad that the input was given, but disappointed that this is the reason why the input is being given. This is my summation. And have we tested the soil on the 2 options for lead, arsenic, and other toxins to make sure that they are good sites? So the answer to that, to my knowledge, is no. But we will.
But will you do that before the comment period begins so that we can make informed comments about where we would
So the comment period is going to start tonight, so no. But before it ends, yes. So
Can you also share with us
the results, yeah. And can I also share the results? So we're going to go here. I'm going to catch you on the next wave. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Martha. I'm a parent here at Powell. I was also a member of the SIT team. And the question that I have is really about the process that got us to this point. So as a member of the Powell community, we heard frequent updates on the progress of the project. We met with the team. It was great. But we were also hearing a couple months ago about strategies that were being put in place to make sure that our students had access to the upshore playground during the construction process, and it was indicated to us that DPR was part of those conversations. And so I'm wondering where the lapse in communication between DGS and DPR came that got us to the point where the community was hearing about this in May, when we were looking at school plans a year plus ago. Because I don't want to speak for anybody else, but what I'm sensing from the community feedback that I've heard and that I've read is that the timing crunch of this is a real problem for members of the community garden. And where was the gap in communication among the city agencies?
Go ahead. So go back to the timeline. So DGS, my division, government affairs and communications messed up. There was no lapse in the communication between DPR and DGS. The lapse was when I explained that we did not do a community meeting to let the community know how real and coming this was happening. So the blame falls on me, which is why I'm here.
So DPR doesn't do communications to garden members about
So the community garden, this community garden specifically is run by the gardeners. DPR just allows them to garden on their land. So I'm going here, then back this way. I'm going to come to you on this one around. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ruth Berry. I'm a garden member and a neighborhood resident. I would like to say thank you for coming together and looking at alternative options. And I'm glad that I feel slightly heartened that the civic action of us sort of making these points has resulted in sort of options being considered other than just demolition. But I would like to push on you a little more on your assertion that the only acceptable location for a parking lot is right there, because this is a community garden that's split on both sides of the street, and it's also quite onerous for us to have a split garden blocks apart, when I think a parking lot across the street from the school is not necessarily too burdensome. And so I really do want to challenge that assertion. And are there any sort of DC government building regulations that require that parking be, 10 feet from the door? And I would also be interested in if there are Powell teachers here, if that's something that they feel is very important to them, that they not cross the street from where they're able to park.
Understood. So I hear you. But at this point, I think that DGS, because of its clients,
Who are?
DCPS, you, the children that go here, and DPR to some extent. I mean, the only thing that we can say is if I hear a lot of that about across the street, we will revisit it. But at this point, the two options are the best to try. My goal, as I told Mark, is to try to have at least 80% of everybody involved happy with some sort of compromise. 90 is my goal, but I know that all I can do is try. So if I can't do it by having the teachers move across the street because you're just inconveniencing somebody, we're trying to do it with better amenities than you have now. So,
And then, so the fate of the south garden would be, it would just stay as is.
Correct.
And it would just separate the north garden.
Correct.
We would replicate all the shared services.
correct. So we're gonna go here, here. You had a question, I'll come back to you. And then there, we'll work this way. So here.
Victoria. I'm talking as loud as I can. I'm a 12-year resident on Taylor Street between 14th and Arkansas. This week was the first that I've heard about the proposed change to the garden or any of the construction related to the Powell School. I am not a parent, but I'm a resident for 12 years, and thank you to the garden folks, because your notice was the first notice I've heard about any kind of construction. So, and thank you for your question, because as a resident, I'm a bit insulted that we weren't told of any of this kind of construction in our neighborhood, number one. Number two, can we look at the option that was proposed, I guess, by the Twin Oaks Garden team about the space on 13th Street as a parking lot, and why is that off the table?
Because we would have to purchase it and some other reasons that would delay the school project. And so before I move to the next set of questions, I apologize to you that you were insulted. Again, I messed up, so I'm taking responsibility for that, and we have modified the program so that all of the project managers know that not only do we need to inform the parents, the envelope of people affected, but to put it on the listserv, to put them, because everybody doesn't have email, to go door to door. We've hired James subsequently to be able to do digital outreach, and so I have a question for you, not because the ANC is here, but because we have an internal dialogue in our shop about who disseminates information. Do you go to any ANC meetings?
Not regularly, so
Okay.
I take insult
No, you shouldn't. No, you should not. It's part of it, yes. The biggest part of it, yes. So we're going to go here, and then I'm going to go in the back. I'm going to come there and then go back around.
I'm Robin Griffin. I'm a community resident and also a member of the Garden. Sorry.
Robin Griffin,
Yes.
community member,
And a member of the Garden.
and member of the Garden.
Yeah. And I had a question about the DC Environmental Policy Act process. I see you prepared an environmental impact screening form, but why wasn't an EIS prepared, considering short-term impacts to air quality during construction would exceed PM 2.5 standards, and also the fact that this project significantly alters a community, which is our garden. And also, can we get a copy of the environmental impact screening form?
So you're going to have to walk me through and repeat it.
Okay.
So why wasn't
An EIS done.
an EIS done
Instead of an environmental impact screening form.
instead of the environmental impact screening form? The answer to that question is because it's a part of our requirement, so we did that.
Yeah, no, I know what the requirements are, but there's certain things that trigger a greater analysis.
And so the city, the DCRA, which is an independent body, did not feel, oh, so she said, why did we not do the other report and just do the one that we did? Because there are other circumstances that trigger the need for doing the report that she's referring to. DCRA did not feel that what we're doing triggered that. And then the last question is, can we publish the report? Yes. So we're going to go here, and then to black shirt, and then over here. Come on, sir, you got to give me fast.
Just a couple questions, because I'm new to the process. I'm a gardener, and I live a little bit further south. And so, how many spaces do the teachers have now, and is this an increase in parking for the teachers?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question is, I happen to live near 3 charter schools, which collectively probably educate a couple hundred students, but I think collectively have about 15 parking spaces.
So you're comparing apples to oranges? He said he
Well,
lived near...
I live near schools that
Hold
have
on,
teachers.
hold on. I'm just trying to repeat your question. So there are 3, he lives near 3 charter schools. Collectively, they have about...
I would say 15 spaces.
15 spaces. What schools are those?
It is Meridian, it is Inspired, and then I can't remember the name of the third one in there.
Okay.
And so they've all recently renovated, and they gave up parking as part of their renovations. And so, you know, my question is sort of, why is it different?
So the question is, they gave up parking. The charter schools have a different, and this is why I was saying it's apples to oranges. They have a different system. You know that the chancellor is trying to take that over as well. But with that being said, some of the charter schools' philosophies are just different, and it's an alternative to DC public schools. So I can't tell you why they did that and our representatives didn't. I can just tell you that this was one of the requirements that they wanted.
Quick follow-up?
No, because I can't, in this round, I can come back. Yes.
My question is follows up on that, because that's a similar question. My name is Linda. I live in Mount Pleasant, not in Kentworth, because there is no community garden in Mount Pleasant. And I'm wondering how that number of parking spaces was determined. My kids do go to one of my kids goes to Bancroft, which has a teeny little parking lot, similar size school, similar neighborhood. So I wonder how that, and there is a second parking lot in the plan for Powell, right, which probably has
A second
12
parking lot?
Isn't there a little one behind building A?
So go to...
Yep, it does.
Secondary space.
Building B.
Building B, right. So I'm wondering how that's the first question. How does that number, how does the number of parking spaces get determined?
It's
My second one is about that space that you're offering us adjacent to the Upchurch playground. So I also found that at our public campus, and that's full of huge trees. So that would be good space for gardening. The plan for some of those enormous trees. I mean, besides the fact that it's steeply graded, there's also trees that are going to keep my.
What's your question for the
So
second part?
my question is, what's the plan for those trees? I mean, what besides the regrading that land? isn't it a problem to be cutting down those massive trees that are shading the playground at Sharp Health and the playground at Upshur? So
I hear you. So the first question is, how does the parking get determined? It gets determined part of the, not just a part of the ed specification, but a part of the SIT team process and a part of the administration working together with the DC central office in determining that. Most of the schools that you are referring to, once they get fully modernized, parking is typically always upgraded. And so that's that. The second part of your question is, if it is so determined that, I think that one of the cons is that those trees provide a canopy. We would work with DDOT, who is with urban forestry, who has the subdivision of urban forestry, to work with their arborist to determine how to best utilize that spot. So I'm gonna come to you in the second round. We're gonna go. It was the lady in the green. Yes.
both sites and they're not equipped to grow it, and they're health hazard.
Right. So we'll make the determination of what the next steps are then. Yes. Or if I find out before, obviously, I'll definitely say before, please don't vote anymore, or not. I don't want to call it voting because it's not voting. It's giving your opinion to the process. The ultimate decision will have to be done by a combination of DCPS and DGS working with DPR. So hold on one second. Everybody this way, I'm going to come to you once I get around. So the only reason I'm doing that is so you don't have to put your hands up.
Hi, my name is Carla. I'm a Powell parent. I'm the unofficial volunteer coordinator, and my thing is more of a comment than a question. If ultimately,
Can you be short?
I'll keep it short. If ultimately it's decided to move the garden, I know that I would be really happy to volunteer to help move things, to help move beehives, to help transplant plants, to help move compost. Like, I think that you could get a lot of volunteers from Powell. We're not anti-garden at all. We love green space, and we're really excited to get more green space because, as you see, we have asphalt playground right now. So, we definitely want to be a part of the process and try to be a helpful part of the process.
Thank you. Anyone over?
Two quick questions. One was, since Sharp is closing, what have y'all thought as far as either moving stuff to there, using their parking lot temporarily? I guess what consideration was there of Sharp and how it's closing? And then the second thing is, what consideration? I guess both options eat up its recreational land and turn into garden land. And so for those of us who aren't gardeners, who either if you have kids who want to play ball in the fields across the street, but there's a soccer game there all the time. It's organized, and there's baseball games that are organized, and you have unorganized, with the park school. And so I'm a little concerned about the fact that then, okay, you have this kind of a domino effect. Okay, we're getting rid of the gardens because we have a parking lot. We're going to get rid of recreation because we need a garden. And whether there's a way to kind of consider that in the process.
So the school closing is going through the process. I'm not familiar right now with the lease and what it says to that charter school. Typically, they're 15 and 20-year leases. And so the charter school operator is typically responsible for that lease, or it reverts back to the city. Since that school has been deemed to go through the disposition process, it will probably do that again. But because, based on your comment, I don't think that they're closing during a period of time, and I said think because I don't know what it is.
Next year, that their building that they were supposed to be moving into will not be ready, so the students at Sharp Health DCPS will not be moving next year. And there are 2 charters already using space that Sharp Health isn't using that are bidding for that space. So that it won't be a school at some point in the next 5 years seems unlikely.
So the code effect is being used somehow. Okay, that's just
My question, what I would have done is see you guys. The second part is that we can work with DPR about programming and permitting. I live up the street, and that middle section gets used as you're talking about, but the baseball field and the soccer field don't have as many organized games as one would think. But we can work with DPR about that. We're gonna go here and then come this way.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I live on Taylor Street, and I graduated from Powell in 1965. My family has had a home in this community for over 50 years. There are residents on our block, and I share the block with Victoria, who are 92, 96, 88, 86, and of course some more youthful residents who enjoy having the garden on that corner and would not like to see it split. So that's just my comment.
Okay, so we enjoyed her comment as well here, but I'm trying to time, right?
I'm Ed. I live across the alley here. I'm one of your neighbors. I appreciate that you're having community forums. One question is that how many spaces of parking does Powell need with the expansion? And
I think it's 44.
And so
is it 54? With the 10, yes. So, sir.
Jeremy, I'm a neighbor of the park. I know that there are lots of variables that you're considering for the different options, but one of them keeps on coming up is the cost. And I was wondering, how does the public access the budget information or the cost benefit analysis that went into each one of these options? Like, what was the budget that was projected for each one of these options when they were considered and rejected, and how do we access that information?
So that information is not public because there is a law that basically says that as the district is doing business, that it's not like, so if Jackie, who works for DGS, and myself work in the capital construction area, and we were doing cost estimates to make a determination. That part is not public information, but the contract or the final budget is all public information. So it's not, I'm just answering your question, it's not accessible. If you don't like it, that's not for me to decide tonight. Sir.
So I am one of the Powell parents, and we know that it's a school that has a lot of students in a small space, and we're really looking forward to renovation. I'm wondering if our sort of consideration of comments and additional options has a potential for slowing down or changing the timeline for our renovation in any way. This is a renovation we needed years ago, frankly.
So this is Kenny's opinion. This is Kenny's opinion. This is not DC government's opinion. DGS, and this is why I went through the whole thing, right? DGS was created to make sure that these things are happening less and less. But we know the political process that money is allocated, and if projects linger, that money starts to evaporate. Two, we also have learned in doing the schools that regardless of what people say, they don't like change. And if they don't, or at least are uncomfortable with change, especially change that is delivered in such a poor way that this was delivered. So, can it slow down the process? Yes. Will it be delivered in 2016? I don't know. With the administration change? I don't know. So,
I'll just say now, this community I understand that there's a very strong
Sir,
This is another one that's
sir,
very committed to seeing
I understand exactly what you're saying, and again, I'm not belittling your point or moving on. I'm saying to you that the community group and the majority of Powell residents that or parents and residents that I've talked to want to make a compromise. This is not an adversarial issue, and I have had many, right? So I know that we can come, but the problem is that my shop messed up. We didn't deliver this with enough time for people to get comfortable with moving, or to say, hey, this is the back of the envelope math that we did, or anything like that. So I messed up. We messed up. So we're trying to fix that. Do you have to pay for that? Unfortunately, yes. And so with that being said, we're not trying to delay the process, but I'm trying to get to where we need to be to make this as acceptable as possible.
So I'm on the pay question. Are we going to pay more money?
No. But that's, no, and he's saying, again, I started out by saying people are going to have different opinions, but it's okay, because when I go and do these meetings, we have to go through this part so we can get to the solution part. So I'm okay with it. We're going to go here, here, and then back. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for waiting so patiently. So before she asks, questions only.
I just want to say that I thought the idea of locating the parking lot where option 2 is located seemed perfectly reasonable to me, and I was wondering if all district employees are guaranteed on-site parking lot as opposed to across the street, or if this is a situation unique to the public school system or Powell, or if it's universal policy.
Policy, no. Guaranteed, no. Preference, yes. Okay, so one caveat. We've gone around once. There are some people here that haven't asked the question. I see you guys in the back, and I'll get you. Okay. It's 7:05. Let me give you my cell phone number if you have to go. If you don't have to go, stay. One second. No, I'm going to do all of that. I'm going to give it to you right now. 202-528. No. 202-580-93. Now, this is the caveat. You cannot call me before 7 a.m. You cannot call me after 11 p.m. unless you want it to my wife and tell her why your issue is so important. You got to talk to me now. You can call me every day, Saturday, Sunday, holiday, 4th of July. You cannot call me on Thanksgiving. 202-580-9361 is my cell number.